Part 61. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 601. Chapter 601 Your Highness, please leave quickly and let the younger one come and stop the rear. Since the weather has gotten colder day by day, my old habit has gradually become unstoppable. Wang An didn't have time to mess around with this humble little eunuch, so he pointed at the following eunuch and said, "Drag him away." Unexpectedly, Li Jinzong was indeed a gangster since he was a child. He is still very strong even after he is over 50 years old. More than 30 eunuchs in their prime could not hold back Wang Jinzong. He caught Su Chen's clothes again. Wang An was angry. The eunuch outside the Jianqing gate was tugging at His Majesty the Crown Prince. How unbecoming it was. Immediately he shouted, "You bitch! Are you seeking death? Don't let me go." Li Jinzong kept begging, but his hands were firmly grasping the prince's clothes. He secretly thought in his heart that if he extended his head, he would be able to shrink his head with a knife. Today, he would risk his life. I just hope that my desperate look can be seen by the Empress, and my desperate efforts will not be in vain. Li Jinzong and Wang An competed, but they forgot how the protagonist felt during the tug-of-war. Su Chen was surprised that the 1.0 version of Wei Zhongxian actually had such a loyal side, but his subordinates were rude and picked up the soft flesh on Li Jinzong's arm and twisted it hard. "Ouch, my mother-in-law." Li Jinzong grabbed Su Chen's hand and retracted it like an electric shock. His wailing sound was so sharp that the listener felt sad. Seizing the opportunity, Su Chen grabbed a eunuch brought by Wang An and ran forward, shouting, "Quick! Let's go to the Wenhua Palace." This eunuch was not stupid either. He glanced at Wang An and immediately the prince flew away. "Run!" Li Jinzong saw that this was a good thing and was about to catch up, but Wang An stopped him and said sullenly, "Li, you don't have to run away, I'd better take a closer look at you first." Su Chen here pulling one of them and running away, the eunuch first looked back and saw that Minister Danbai's retinue was also running behind him, and felt relieved. Then he stopped at a crossroads and looked behind him again. Then the eunuch explained to Su Chen, "Your Highness, no one is chasing you, let me follow the younger one and go to the Zongji Hall first. The younger one will take a rest for you." Su Chen looked at the messy clothes on his body, nodded and followed the eunuch. Zongji Hall is between Jianji Hall and Huangji Hall. It was the place where the emperor took a rest and practiced etiquette before going to Huangji Hall to hold a grand ceremony. It's okay to tidy up your image here. After washing up a little and putting on a bunch of clothes again, Su Chen walked out of the hall and took a deep breath of fresh air. It's really troublesome to get dressed tomorrow. Su Chen dressed up again. At this time, he was a handsome young man with red lips and fair skin. If it weren't for that rare look of looking around, it would be no exaggeration to say that he was the crown prince of a country. When the servant saw the prince coming out, he bowed and saluted, "Your Highness, follow me, come." A few steps out of the Zongji Hall, the eunuch suddenly shouted, "Your Highness, hurry up and let the younger one come and break the rear." It turned out that there were 3 more eunuchs from Li Suanxi running towards here from a distance. Su Chen was furious. The crown prince, who was about to ascend the throne, was actually chased like this by a group of eunuchs. Not to mention the damage to the country, he was alone. It's hard for a man to pass this test. Su Chen re-entered the Zongji Hall, where he saw several swords hanging on the wall of a room. "Your Highness! Your Highness is on the wrong track. Run towards Wenhua Palace." Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. N. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 602. Chapter 602 The Prince has sent it? Minister Danbai's subordinates thought that the always cowardly prince had committed an act of mediocrity again, and pointed outside and shouted. The eunuch who blocked Li Xian's minions was in a hurry. "This prince is too timid. We have already said that I will no longer be the queen, but his highness still ran into the palace to hide. Will someone take him out soon? Why? Little brother, hurry into the palace and call his highness to come out and take him to the Wenhua palace as quickly as possible. The eunuch shouted to the servant. The servant lowered his head and sighed, ran into the palace, and ran out again before he could take a breath. The eunuch looked anxiously and wanted to curse the fainted servant, but saw that the tall prince walked out majestically, holding a shining sword in his hand. At this time, the eunuch sent by Li Suanqi had already pushed away the eunuch Wangan who was blocking the way, and ran away, shouted loudly, "Your Highness! The Empress has an order, telling your Highness to return to Qianqing Palace as soon as possible." Suchen walked down the Zongji Hall with a sword in his hands. Minister Danbai and his servants were dumbfounded and stepped out of the way. They thought in their hearts that the sun was shining in the west. The prince was going crazy. "Let me see who dares to stop me!" Suchen shouted. This was the first time he had held this sword. It felt good in the hand. As the saying goes, a sword matches a hero. At this moment, Suchen felt that he was the embodiment of a hero. On the other side, the 2 or 3 minions sent by Li Suanqi, to Jawa dog ears. Then who is who? And so comes to this prince, I will take you out. With excitement in his heart, his true nature was exposed. Suchen uttered a curse word and waved the Mingbao sword at random at the eunuch Li Suanqi, who was surrounding him 3 meters away and did not dare to step forward. Everyone was stunned for a long time, and they saw it in their hearts. This is a rare spectacle in the palace. The eunuchs who are following Li Suanqi know very well what kind of virtue Prince Zhu Yuxiao is. Who dares to cry after being beaten or complain after being scolded? Who can think highly of him in his heart? Yes. If he hadn't been the crown prince of the Ming dynasty, he would have died if he had such a character. Wang An's eunuch who followed him was thoughtful in his heart. As the saying goes, rabbits can also be anxious. This Li Suanqi forced too much, and on the outside, he was very thoughtful. The ministers couldn't stand it. I'm afraid His Highness was forced to do what he did now. Oh, what a pain for the 16-year-old young prince. He followed the eunuch and the retinue and leaned against Suchen. He had asked them to protect him just now. His Highness, the Crown Prince, is now being protected by the always cowardly Crown Prince. The most important thing in a fight is not to lose momentum. Suchen held up his sword and glared angrily at the surrounding minions. He led the 2 of them forward with a look of disdain. Your Highness, you went to the wrong place. This is the way. A kind reminder from the retinue. Ahem, well, I'm a little dizzy from being so angry with these sons of bitches. Suchen looked a little embarrassed, and regained his momentum, holding the sword in his hand, holding his head high and glaring angrily as he walked away. The eunuchs did not dare to stop him, so they had no choice but to follow behind. If you just go back and report like this, your skin will peel off, but let's see if there is any improvement. Maybe the prince has been hard for a while and then softened. After walking for a while, another group of eunuchs sent by Li Suanqi rushed towards us. When they saw this posture, they were also stunned for a long time. Then, like the group of eunuchs just now, they followed the prince. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 603. Chapter 603 Super Long Play. The same thing happened again and again. By the time Suchen and the others walked to the Wenhua Palace, there were 8 or 9 eunuchs following him. The civil and military ministers waiting in front of the palace stared at this strange scene with wide eyes. The always cowardly prince actually walked in front with a sword in his hands, accompanied by 2 nondescript Hangha second generals, and a group of dejected eunuchs behind him. What is going on? Wang An's eunuchs quickly stepped forward and sang to the ministers, "His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has arrived." The ministers suppressed the questions in their minds and saluted the prince. Suchen didn't know how to deal with it. In his career in his early 20s, this kind of situation had never happened before. He could only imitate the images on TV and novels and pretend to shout no courtesy. The minister wearing white mourning clothes asked, "Why is your highness carrying a sword?" Suchen was furious and pointed at the eunuchs behind him with his sword and said, "Just ask these dogs." The accompanying eunuch immediately explained it loudly and embellished in front of the ministers. After he finished speaking, the ministers' expressions also changed. Su Wen heard that Li Xian was too arrogant and rude, but he didn't expect that he was becoming more and more lawless. The Ming dynasty is the domain of the Zhou family. Is there any justice for a mere chosen servant who relies on the favor of the late emperor to dare to block the majestic crown prince of a country? Is there any royal law? All the eunuchs knew that they were at a disadvantage, and one of them, who was a little bolder, wanted to say a few words. The subordinates of Minister Danbai who were standing aside could not stand it. He had no right to speak, but how could his humble status stop the righteousness in his heart? A round of indignant and righteous scolding made the eunuchs sent by the selection servants speechless. It wasn't until the servant's mouth became dry that he licked his lips and stopped making this declaration of justice. Suchen dropped his sword and sighed. "Huan Cao passed away just now. I have always been a coward, so how can I dare to use force in the palace? Li Xian's attendants stopped me in the Nuan pavilion, and I was rescued by the chief of ceremonies and other officials. On the way, I was grabbed by Li Jinzong and couldn't move forward or retreat. Where was my face at this time? When I arrived at the front palace gate, I selected attendants and sent several people to escort me back to the palace. I would like to ask you all, what should a dignified crown prince of a country do in such a situation?" Drawing the sword and looking around, it was extremely sad, angry, and humiliating. Suchen said it sincerely. He didn't know if it was the remnant soul of Zhu Yuxiao that had taken over his body. Anyway, he was very surprised. What a great performance! When did he become so eloquent? No matter what Suchen thought there, the chords of justice in the hearts of the ministers present had been successfully stirred. Those standing beside the ministers all shouted to Yang Lian, the commander of the military affairs department. "The phoenix occupying the dragon's nest is already a transgression, now Li actually dares to stop the prince's chariot in front of everyone. How is it different from house arrest? This is clearly an attempt to overtake one's subordinates and do what the Emperor Wu did." Everyone was awestruck. Academician Lu Yishan took a step forward and said loudly, "The move to the palace is imminent. The previous emperor has passed away and a new emperor has not yet been established. At this critical moment of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Zheng, it is time for Shangshu to persuade the Li family to move to the Yuliuan palace. Filu reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. N. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 604. Can the 604th His Highness return the favor? Fangkeng, the chief minister and chief minister of the cabinet, was silent for a while and said, "There's no rush, let's hold the Zhengdong Palace ceremony first." The chief minister's words are reasonable. The prince and all the ministers are here. It is important to correct the title of the new prince first. So the ministers supported Suchen and went through a set of procedures to determine the title of the new king, and the date was set for September 6. He ascended the throne in the Jianqing Palace. However, when the prince wanted to ascend the throne in the Jianqing Palace, Li Suanqi, who occupied the Jianqing Palace and did not give up, immediately became the target of public criticism. Now the first assistant Fangkeng could not sit still, so he could only bite the bullet and allow everyone to Shangshu, "Please ask the prince to issue an edict to Li Suanqi to move to the Yaluan Palace." Suchen let them do it with a dumb face. Anyway, what they are doing now is beneficial to him. Historically, the Huangji Palace, also known as the Jinluan Palace in later generations, is the authentic one. The place where the new emperor ascends the throne. The ministers want to ascend the throne in the Qianqing Palace, which is obviously putting pressure on Li Suanqi. These ministers are so silent when they play tricks. As a college student, how can I control them in the future? Or how can we not be manipulated by them? I also think of the various comments made by later generations on the civil servants of the late Ming dynasty. It doesn't matter if they are killed, their names will remain in history. What they are good at is swearing, strife and party struggles, and the countries concerned are really but few people care about the reality of today. Relying on this gang of noodles to rule the country and bring peace to the world, and to realize my ambition of becoming the hegemon in my heart, brother, is no different than the moon in the mirror. In the end, I will live a life of inaction, and maybe I will have to be given the title of a foolish king by these gangs of thieves. To strike iron, you have to be tough yourself. To make a difference, you have to build your own power. The Qianqing Palace was occupied by Li Xian, and as a prince of a country, Su Chen could only live in the Saiking Palace not far from the Wenhua Palace. This made the ministers angry. The Qianqing Palace was originally the residence of the Ming dynasty monarch. Li Suanqi's attempt to seize the Qianqing Palace's name was unfair and arrogant. His ambition was clearly revealed. On the way back, the ministers made an appointment one after another. After returning home, they should fully mobilize their literary talents and write a brilliant article in preparation for going to Shu to attack Li Suanqi the next day. Su Chen followed 4 eunuchs to Saiking Palace. Originally, there was only one eunuch responsible for personally attending to Su Chen's daily life, but Su Chen didn't think so. Li Suanqi is now very powerful in the palace, which can be seen from the fact that she sent 3 waves of eunuchs to urge her back today. A fight with a small number of people would definitely lead to disadvantages. With Su Chen's frail 16-year-old body, no one would even know if someone sent by Li Suanqi came to take him away in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, the eunuch Wang An did not have many redundant eunuchs in a short period of time. The 2 eunuchs around him were given to Su Chen, and one of them was transferred from among his subordinates. However, Wang An assured Su Chen that a group of strong eunuchs would be brought in soon to ensure the safety of the future new king. In order not to be snatched away in the middle of the night, Su Chen negotiated with 4 eunuchs, and the 4 eunuchs took turns keeping watch to ensure that anyone coming in from outside would know immediately. After doing these things, Su Chen came to his bedroom and looked around. The eunuch next to him asked with concern, "Your Highness, are you satisfied?" He didn't feel it in the sleeping room of Nuange in Qianqing Palace, but now he felt like the bed was a bit depressing. This wooden bed looks like a square box. Although the patterns of birds and animals are very exquisite, it looks like a coffin when the curtains are lowered. _ Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 605. Chapter 605 Planning for the New King in the Future. Forget it, let's just pretend to hang up the mosquito net, just get used to it. Su Chen is not very particular about this. There is a wooden frame next to the wooden bed, which should be used to hang clothes. Su Chen still has to learn how to use the furniture of the Ming dynasty. But the children of the royal family can open their mouths when they have clothes to eat. Even if Su Chen occasionally makes a fool of himself and doesn't know how to use it, it shouldn't be a big problem. Get me a few pieces of paper and a few, brushes and ink on this table. I just remembered that I don't have a pen anymore. Although I practiced calligraphy for a while in college, I couldn't write well and the speed was extremely slow. At that time, Quan thought it was just for mental health. The eunuch looked slightly surprised and agreed. Working for the future new king is a promising job. The eunuch was very enthusiastic. After a while, he had all the pens, inks, paper and inkstones, polished the ink, and then stood aside, eagerly watching the prince's next move. What to do? You know, the prince knew every word when he entered school. Now that he wants these four treasures of the study, it will be a big news. Suchen picked up the brush, weighed the pen holder with his fingers, looked at the eunuch beside him and said, "Get out." "Ha ha, yes. If His Highness has any orders, just give him a shout." The eunuch said that the prince was shy and exited the bedroom with understanding. It was still early, around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but a lamp was lit in the room. Looking at the only person who turned on, Suchen shook his head. "This is 1620 ad. We can't ask too much for the lighting in this room. With this relatively bright light, I dip the hair in ink." Smell with the ancient flavor everywhere, Suchen successfully calmed down and began to recall everything that happened in the day, gains and losses, and integrate information with the usual systematic and rigorous attitude of engineering students. Looking at the slightly fluttering lanterns, Suchen sat. He remained motionless at the desk for a long time, writing 3 words on the rice paper: sex, tranquility, and unity. This is his habit of remembering things. When he can understand it, he will not write in too much detail, especially when he writes something that he does not want others to read. When I arrived at something. These 3 characters represent that I, like Zhu Yuxiao, have a quiet personality. Then write, when, difference, and common. It means that I, like Zhu Yuxiao, have the same cultural aspects, especially ancient Chinese and traditional Chinese. He was very poor at handwriting, let alone writing an article. Then Suchen frowned and wrote, cowardly, strong, and different. Zhu Yuxiao's childhood experience made him cowardly, but Suchen was a bit vindictive. Personality. What does it take to make others accept this big change in personality? He frowned again and wrote, living habits, unknown. This is a big trouble. If someone pays attention to it, it is likely to become a big trouble. Maybe someone will say that Zhu Yuxiao is a fake, and then he will suffer from skin cramps and ling qi. Suchen shuddered, shook his head, and made up his mind to solve this problem as soon as possible. Finally, he once again calmed down your mood and write down the 4 words: talent, wealth, research, and military. When you become an emperor in the future, you must have talents that you can make use of easily. Then you must make money in a wise way and have a wide source of money. This is everything. Action comes first. Filu reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. N. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 606. Chapter 606: A once and for all solution. The second is to develop a scientific research team that can withstand actual combat. Suchen didn't want a few seeds of love for scientific research to appear occasionally in the Ming dynasty. What he wanted was a group that could transform practical work experience into theoretical knowledge through recording, discussion, and in-depth research, and become a scientific research group with various disciplines. This was crucial to changing the Ming dynasty's culture of emphasizing literature over craftsmen. With the foundation of scientific research, it is not difficult to build an army with high-level equipment. However, Suchen didn't dare to take over the training of this army. He should choose a few outstanding generals to lead him. He would go and see it when he had time and make some comments. The Ming army during the Wanli period completed the transition from offense to defense against the Qing army's wild boar skin in Liaodong. Then came the 1-month short-lived dynasty of Guangzhou, and then the Tiankai dynasty that he was about to take over. The morale of the current Ming army against the Qing army should not be as low as that of the Chongzhen dynasty. The only generals Suchen knew who dared to fight were Xiang Tingbai, Sun Chengzong, and other generals. The situation is not too bad, much better than that of his nominal brother Chongzhen. After thinking about it for so long, Suchen stood up, read these unpleasant words a few times, wrote them down silently, and then put the piece of paper on the lamp holder and burned it. Taking a deep breath, Suchen made a preliminary plan. The first priority is to think of a way to resolve once and for all the differences in personality and habits between himself and Tiankai. It's best to make people around you think it's not a big problem and it's completely acceptable. The wooden bed has hooked curtains, and the pillows and quilts are soft and comfortable to the touch. Suchen fell down on the bed, looked at the top of his head, and thought carefully about the solution once and for all. "Master, it's time for dinner." The eunuch's voice came from outside the house. After waiting for a long time, there was no movement in the house, so the eunuch's voice rose a little louder. But the house was still quiet. The eunuch thought something had happened to His Highness, so he quickly opened the door and went in, only to see the prince. The master was lying on the bed, with the curtains not closed, staring blankly at the dome of the wooden bed. The eunuch approached the bed quietly and whispered, "Master, it's time for dinner. May I have your name?" "Su." Chen asked suddenly, his eyes still staring upward. The eunuch was relieved. As long as nothing happened to His Highness, he quickly replied, "Sir, I don't dare to say it, my name is ugly, I'm afraid that I will make fun of you." "Oh? Then let me laugh." The eunuch hesitated for a while as if he was shy, and then hesitantly said. The little boy's family was poor and he was a tenant farmer working for his employer. He had no education, so the family named him Lin Liuyi, which means he was born on the first day of June. After the eunuch finished speaking, he looked at the prince eagerly. It's a pity that the prince's smile is not that low. Isn't it, Lin Liuyi? Mingtasia Zhu Yuanzhang is also called Zhu Kongba. There are many children in the countryside such as Wang Dandan and Zhang Go. It's gone, June 1st, it sounds great. Liuyi, do you think your father is sick? Ah! Lin Lu was startled. He knelt under the bed and stared eagerly at the current prince and future monarch. He said in panic, "Master, please don't scare me. I don't know how to scare you. Do you usually look at me like a person who likes to read?" Suchen asked quietly. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 607. Chapter 607. The Immortal Caresses Me. Lin Liuyi's thoughts were already messy and he couldn't keep up with His Highness's rhythm, so he let out a confused "ah." After a long while, he replied, "How do you call this small? Forgive you. Damn it, I really don't look like someone who likes reading. It doesn't look like it, so why add the word real?" Suchen rolled his eyes at him in his heart. He continued, "But I really want to study now. I want my husband to teach me how to read and write." Your Highness, this is a good thing." "How?" "But I don't like reading. I suddenly want to study." "Isn't it because I am sick?" He. Lin Liuyi laughed dryly and quietly wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He thought to himself that his family was so weird that day, and the emperor's heart was unpredictable. "Master, I thought, maybe this is not a disease, but a good thing. I am older and wiser, and I want to become a wise king like Grandpa Chinju. This is a sign of the resurgence of our Ming dynasty." Suchen didn't know what the little eunuch in Liuyi was thinking. No matter how he blew it, he had to perform the whole show. Suchen sighed faintly, frowned slightly, and said, "These 2 days I always have the same dream. I dreamed that an old Taoist priest kept touching my head." "Ah!" Lin Liuyi opened his eyes wide and listened to His Highness's words. "I fell asleep again after touching it. When I wake up, there are always more things in my mind, a lot, and very messy." Liuyi's lips were already trembling, and he trembled. "Master, are you an old god?" "No way," that old Taoist priest, with his tattered clothes and those eyes, seemed to be able to see people from head to toe. Hearing what the prince said so truthfully, Liuyi took a breath, thought hard, and said with a bitter face, "Well, I haven't read a book. I only know that there is the Jade Emperor and Queen Mother in the sky, and the Lord of Hell underground, and so on that's Fairy Chang'e on the moon." Old Taoist priest, Your Highness, why don't you ask the gentlemen from various ministries? Why don't you tell the imperial doctor first? If you don't take a good look at it, I can't let it go. Suchen said, seemingly extremely distressed. Well, sir, can you have a meal first and then send the doctor to you? Tell the imperial doctor first. If you don't understand it, you won't have the appetite. Yes, the young one will go to the imperial doctor. Watching Lin Liuyi walk away, Suchen exhaled and patted his face with his hands. It's not easy to act cool like this. He raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, how could he cause trouble if he didn't call the doctor? Let the imperial doctor confirm that there is nothing serious wrong with you, and then reappear in a few scenes to make the night dream of the old Taoist seem real and illusory, and then show that you are extremely distressed that your personality seems to be changing, and you are pouring bitterness on the people around you. Come to think of it, after a long time, no one will doubt it. No matter what this idea is, this is the best solution Suchen can think of at the moment. But as a result, I have some symptoms of split personality. It seems that hysteria was also mentioned in ancient times. I don't know how ancient Chinese medicine dealt with hysteria, so don't overdo it. Suchen was worried, and an old doctor named Chen hurried over under the leadership of Lin Liuyi. Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. N. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 608. Chapter 608. The situation is over. After attending the ceremony, diagnosing the pulse, and asking questions, the old Dr. Chen tugged at his gray beard and frowned for a long time, and then slowly said, "Your Highness, your illness is not serious. It's just that Qi and Yin are slightly weak, and the pulse is slightly weak. As long as His Highness takes an open mind on certain things and walks around more, he will be cured on his own without any medicine." Listening to the conclusion drawn by the old lady, Suchen let out a long sigh of relief. It seems that this old lady is not cheating, has a very good professional ethics, and does not use medicine indiscriminately. The medicine is 3 parts poisonous, and Chinese medicine is bitter and difficult. It would be best to avoid this crime. At that moment, Suchen thanked the imperial doctor and ordered Liuyi to get some rewards. As for the specific rewards, let Liuyi decide on his own. How could I, the noble prince, do such a thing? It was a small matter. After seeing off the imperial doctor, Suchen happily had dinner. Thinking that this matter would be spread throughout the palace and the ministers tomorrow, he felt relieved. In 1620, the nightlife in Beijing was pitifully small, and at most he could only go to do something shameless in any building or pavilion. As for Suchen, who is only 16 years old, there is no nightlife, unless he dares to imitate Zhu Haozhou, and he has to have fun even if there is no entertainment. Suchen does not have Zhu Haozhou now. Of course, those who are brave will not bother to play with fireworks and the like. Looking at the bright moon outside the window, I think of my hometown 393 years later, the old parents and brothers in my hometown, and my eyes can't help but feel sore. The Forbidden City is very beautiful at night. It was quiet, even quieter than my hometown in the countryside. It was so quiet that it made people feel chilly. I lay back on the bed and didn't know what time it was. I called out and asked what time it was. The little eunuch said it was between Su Shi and Hai Shi, about it's like 9 o'clock in the evening. You know, in the original world, this was the time when nightlife just started. I lay in bed and thought about it for a long time before falling asleep. In the dream, he really dreamed of an old Taoist priest, touching his head again and again. His face was blurry, his eyes could see through everything in the world, his behavior was very obscene, and his clothes were sloppy. Chapter The next day, Zhou Jiamo, the Minister of Civil Affairs, and the Ministry of Military Affairs informed Yang Lian, Yashizhou Guangdu and others about the matter, and asked Li Suanqi to move to the Yulyuan Palace. When Su Chen and a group of ministers stood in front of Li Suanqi felt dizzy. She knew that the situation was over, and if the curtain failed to work, her extravagant hopes of becoming a queen and the Empress Dowager in the future would be shattered. But the extreme reluctance in her heart made her unwilling to give up this honorary title that was once so close to her. She was unwilling to do so. She resents it. She resented the dead Guangzhou. Resent the hypocritical minister in front of me. She even resented Zhu Yuxiao, the crown prince of the Ming dynasty, who had always been weak and allowed her to bully her. In the end, the negotiation broke down, and Li Xian's servant acted shamelessly and refused to leave the Qianqing palace. The ministers and Wang An and other eunuchs present were quite unhappy and had no choice in the face of this rogue boss Li. So everyone agreed on the time and countermeasures for the next boss fight, reassigned tasks and reminded each other to bring equipment and weapons, and more importantly, morale. Be sure to clear the dungeon of Qianqing Palace, kill Boss Li, and gain their reputation. Su Chen is no longer interested in Li Suanqi's affairs. The ending is destined to be the same as history, and she no longer has the ability to make a comeback. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 609. Chapter 609, The Appearance of a Ming Jun. On the way back, several ministers who took care of life asked about his hysteria with great concern. It was also reported that Dr. Chen once again analyzed Su Chen's condition in detail, expressed great interest in some changes in his preferences, and enthusiastically discussed the sloppy old Taoist priest Su Chen mentioned. Although the prince is silent and has strange powers, but there are some things that can be carried out in a sedan chair and shown to the prince, why not do them? According to my opinion, it may be Zhuangzhou, the ancestor of the pre-Qin dynasty. Grand Bachelor Lu Yishuo held his beard and groaned. Everyone unanimously agreed with Lu Yishu's judgment. Yang Lian's eyes turned red, and he looked at the embarrassed Su Chen and shouted, "The new king has the appearance of a wise king, and I have hope for the rejuvenation of the Ming dynasty." Sun Chengzong, who was the teacher of Su Chen's cheap father Guangzong at that time, and now is Su Chen's teacher, has high hopes. I hope that Sun Chengzong will seize the good opportunity when the prince is suffering from hysteria, work hard to teach him cultural knowledge, and realize the rejuvenation of the Ming dynasty. In the prosperous age, he made contributions. Sun Chengzong was an outstanding figure. He was a scholar at the age of 16, and then traveled to the border and learned military strategy. Later, he passed the examination and was ranked second in the examination and ranked second in the Jinshi. This is comparable to in later generations, many people were admitted to Tsinghua University and Peking University. The ministers had a lively discussion. Su Chen did not let go of this good atmosphere, and immediately bowed to Sun Chengzong and said, "Sir, my disciples are thirsty for knowledge, so why not teach them how to read and pronounce now, bar." Okay. Sun Chengzong, who was nearly 60 years old, was overjoyed. Although he suspected that the prince was putting on a show, he immediately grabbed Su Chen's wrist and strode away. As the saying goes, opportunities must not be missed and they will never come back. Generations of descendants have not loved learning, and now they meet him. A person who is thirsty for knowledge must hold on to it in order to comfort the spirit of the late emperor and not lose his reputation as a teacher of 2 generations of emperors. The place where the two taught is the Saiking Palace where they live. The simplified and traditional Chinese characters are almost the same. First of all, Plus he was pretty good at classical Chinese in high school, it wouldn't be too difficult for Suchen to learn this ancient article. But what happened next shocked even him. In ancient times, if you want to bring enlightenment to the world, you must first govern your country. If you want to govern your country, you must first regulate your family. If you want to straighten your family, you must first cultivate your body. If you want to cultivate your body, you must first rectify your heart. If you want to rectify your heart, you must first be sincere in your intention. If you want to be sincere in your intention, you must first understand it. The way to know is to examine things. After examining things, you will know. After knowing, you will be sincere. After you are sincere, your mind will be upright. If your mind is upright, you will then cultivate your body. After cultivating the body, the family will be in order, the family will be in order, and then the country will be governed, and the country will be governed, and then the world will be peaceful. From the emperor to the common people, everything is based on self-cultivation. Sun Changzong stared at Suchen dumbfounded. He picked out his ears and wiped his eyes regardless of appearance, as if he couldn't see clearly the crown prince who had been his student for many years. Just now he just read this classic passage from the Great Learning, and the purpose was to make His Highness understand the importance of self-cultivation. He did not teach him the 4 books and 5 classics now. However, His Highness actually recited them immediately. As His Highness's teacher, he knew that Suchen could not recite them in advance. A good word. Ahem, well, His Highness is a young and intelligent man, can you understand the meaning? Sun Changzong had an expectant look on his face, and his expression seemed to be crazy. After reciting this passage, Suchen himself was shocked, secretly thinking it was strange, why his memory was so good. Fe. Lu reminds you, reading 3 things, collection, recommend, share. N. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 610. Chapter 60, ascended to the throne and proclaimed himself emperor. The surface meaning of this passage is not difficult, but the difficulty lies in the 4 words investigating things to achieve knowledge. Everything is based on self-cultivation, and self-cultivation is based on studying things to gain knowledge. However, how to study things, how to gain knowledge, and where to study things to gain knowledge have baffled millions of people. Anyone who can clearly understand this method of studying things to achieve knowledge is all a successful Confucian scholar or a sage. Suchen happened to know a sage born in Ming Dynasty, Wang Yangming. But he didn't want to be too shocking. It would be meaningless and would attract criticism. Well, students can generally understand the meaning of this passage, but they don't know how to implement the 4 words of investigating things to achieve knowledge. Suchen bowed and said, well, it's great to be able to grasp the key to this passage right away. Although I don't believe in ghosts and gods, His Highness's changes really surprised me. Sun Changzong was extremely excited. He had found a treasure. However, he was alert in his heart. Wuzongzu Haozao also ascended the throne at the age of 16, and he was also a young and smart boy. However, he became the villain of the emperor, a faint king. A typical example of poor students among students. Naughty. In order to prevent the Prince Zhu Yuxiao from becoming a guy like Wuzong, he decided to teach the prince some principles of self-cultivation in the past few days, hoping to become a wise king in a few years. For 2 hours and 4 hours, the teacher Sun Changzong and student Suchen spent this teaching time happily. The teacher taught seriously and the students studied carefully. The performance of teachers and students can probably be used as a model for future generations. After 2 more days, Suchen's performance in these 2 days was the prince is a role model and a benchmark. However, although he has been praised by teachers, ministers, and eunuchs from time to time in the past few days, judging from their situation, his worries seem to be unnecessary. But Suchen did not dare to let down his guard. Since it was a trick, It should be done completely, try to do it as flawlessly as possible, and always be careful not to overdo it with your behavior or language. And occasionally mention in front of these people the things that I have been dreaming about the old man every day in the past few days, so as to deepen their memory without making it too obvious. To pave the way for possible troubles in the future. But Suchen didn't lie. He really dreamed about the old Taoist priest every day. September Gengchen, the 6th day of the lunar month. The day of the enthronement ceremony of Zhu Yuxiao, the 13th emperor of the Ming dynasty. Li Suanqi had left the Qianqing palace in tears. From then on, she was no longer a character in Suchen's dictionary. Even apart from the first few greetings, Suchen never saw Li Suanqi. This woman was too cruel and had no conscience in her heart. Suchen looked down on her from the bottom of his heart. In the main hall of Qianqing Palace, Suchen was wearing a crown, which was a flat crown with bead curtains on the front and back, and a dragon robe that was black on top and bright yellow on the bottom. This equipment completely changed Suchen's view of the emperor's clothes. In the past, the emperor wearing a bright yellow dragon robe on TV was either mentally retarded or stupid, which made Suchen feel that the dragon robe was also a little silly. However, this black hat and black top are paired with bright yellow lower body clothing. The red, blue, yellow, and green dragons, birds, and clouds embellished on the clothes and hat not only look noble, but also reveal a solemn and domineering air that cannot be underestimated. Well, this is the Hanfu that I like. So cool. Suchen sat happily on the dragon chair, looking down at the civil and military officials under the jade steps.